Hello. Thank you. Man, that's a hard one to follow. Wow. I'm Mike Bithell. I made Thomas Was Alone, which was an overrated game about rectangles that jump. And I'm now working on Volume, which is a much overhyped stealth game. It was an interesting journey going from that, and it's one that I want to talk about, and I want to follow the advice and talk about a mistake I made. So this can be scary. Going from Thomas Was Alone was a hobby game. I worked in industry at big companies. And every weekend and every evening I would go home and fiddle with these rectangles. That sounded better in my head. And I would make stuff, and it went well, and obviously it came out and it did well enough that suddenly I had the resources to make my dream game, to make whatever I wanted. And the answer to that was Volume, was a stealth game that I'd always wanted to make. And I started making it, but I fell almost immediately into a very old trap, a very traditional trap, something that's been around for millennia. We have a word for it. It's called the Old Boys Club. It's the system by which people tend to be conservative in who they hire. They tend to, hire their friends, hire people they've worked with before, hire people who went to the same schools as them, that kind of thing. And I found myself descend very quickly into that trap. The first year of people I hired was exclusively, I believe exclusively, made up of people I had directly worked with before. And I wasn't happy about that. I realized that I was basically repeating exactly the same patterns that existed in the industry that I had tried so hard to get out of and start my own thing. I was an employer, and I was employing a very specific kind of person, the kind of person who I'd always worked with. I was copying and duplicating the same structures that I'd come up in. And I can understand why I did it. Conservative hiring makes sense. It's practical on a very kind of logical level. You go, well, I'm going to work with the people I know can do this, people I've worked with before, people that I trust and already get on with. It saves a lot of trouble. It's a trap that I can understand why I'm myself and so many people do it. It was interesting seeing that from the inside. And I didn't really have much of a budget. I knew I was working with limitations, and I wanted to make the most of that. The game was king, right? The game was the main thing. The game had to be awesome, and I was taking every shortcut I could to get there. But like I said, I started to worry about it. I started to worry that the people I was hiring, while awesome, and my friends and people I cared about, and it was cool to give them jobs and to get them out of the jobs they didn't like, I realized that the process of doing that was potentially harmful, both to the game I was making and to the industry at large. I wanted to fix it. I'm also a coward, so I didn't want to talk about it publicly. I didn't want to kind of talk about this in public because it scared me, frankly, and in retrospect, we've all dealt with that now. I decided to very quietly make a change to the way I hired people. I specifically decided I didn't want to hire anyone who was working in the games industry. Now, obviously, there's rules to that. Obviously, I needed an amazing code team, and I needed a code team with experience of making video games. There's lots of jobs in the games industry. They're very specific to games. But outside of that, whenever there was an opportunity, I hired someone who was not brought up in the industry. I hired various people. I didn't hire people who were just starting out either. I didn't just hire graduates. I hired a couple, but I didn't hire just graduates. I was hiring experts. I was just hiring experts that didn't have any video games on their CV. So I did a lot with that. I hired a bunch of people. I've got lists. So I hired a great academic writer, Matty Bryce, to consult on my script. And she did amazing work that I'm going to have to work very hard to make sure that I don't take the credit for Volume Story, because her impact alone was fantastic. I worked with journalist Lee Alexander to get the design right. Massive Metal Gear Solid fan, and one that's had a massive impact along with Steve Karan, who she works with. I had TV storyboarders, film animators, a bunch of people working on the game, a bunch of people who'd never worked on games or had worked on games in a different kind of vein, and I got to bring them in. And Volume got good. Like, I'm not going to boast about it because I don't do that. As anyone on Twitter will know, I'm very down on my own work. But it got really good from the bits that they were doing. It's the stuff that I did that I worry about now, not theirs. And that was awesome. And it worked, and it made the game better. And I hope it had a good impact on a lot of careers. A lot of people who've worked on my game are now going on to do more game work, to specifically go and get on other projects. They're using the small amount of publicity that Volume has to parlay themselves into other jobs in the games industry. At a time where everyone across the world is looking for work, they are finding a whole new avenue to work in. which is cool. It makes me feel happy. Now, one other fact. The interesting thing, and I've obviously been jumping around the diversity word because I'm a middle-class white guy, and we've talked enough about this subject, often in very boring talks. But one of the cool side effects of when you're hiring outside of games is that suddenly we get to enjoy the enormous diversity that other industries have already achieved, that we are massively lagging behind on. Out of all the people I hired, the vast majority of the people I hired during this second year were female. Many of them were non-white. That's a very weird word, and I'm incredibly, already massively wish I hadn't said that. I was actually achieving diversity objectives that I wasn't doing consciously, and I'm very happy about that. And I think that if we actually look outside, we can get really awesome, interesting people into the games industry, and also make things better for people who are here already. Thank you very much. I apologize for the rush.